We have a special guest. Zuni Fetish Doll! Yay!
That doesn't look like Burke.
What happened to Burke? He must have been murdered by the Zuni Fetish Doll.
He's very quiet.
Hello, friends.
My favorite part of Zuni Fetish Doll is the little foot pitter patters when it was running around.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Cinemondo Podcast with Kathy, Mark, and Burke, talking about movies and TV shows and whatever else we want to talk about.
And Mark looks very low.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Here's Mark.
The Zuni Fetish
Mark's
Doll.
low rye.
I was going for that.
We're professionals.
He just drives a little slower.
We do this for a living. We
make
wish.
the big bucks.
Well, today we have a episode that I'm excited about because this is one of the things that got me into TV and movies, and one of the creative, like a fountain of creative work, and just amazing. It's like anything from that era that you love and remember, and it stays with you. This guy probably wrote it.
Yes, and I feel the same way because we all kind of grew up in the 60s and 70s watching TV, and I didn't realize how many different shows this particular guy wrote for. I mean, you look and you go, oh my God. And I guarantee if you go to one of those shows, like these are old shows like Combat and Thriller, Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Rawhide. And
these are shows that I kind of remember when I was very young, but then in syndication, you'd see them. Chances are, if it was a really great episode, he's probably the guy that wrote it.
And we've mentioned his name a lot, just in passing, as we've done this podcast for over 3 years. And we always tend to throw in a Richard Matheson name because he's done everything good. So every time we have like a favorite scenes, or we talk about, a series or something, it always seems like some of our favorite episodes or favorite movies, he had something to do with it. So I think it's about damn time we did a Richard Matheson episode.
Yeah. I mean, why not? And it's a good excuse to show some clips from some of the cool ones too. Exactly. But he is really the guy. I mean, you talk with your nerd movie friends, and it's like tons of genre stuff, tons of, scary things. Some of the scariest stuff that's ever been on television. Some of the most suspenseful stuff, even if it's not supernatural. He does these really, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but he does these really simple stories, and it's almost like they're based on a what if this happened? Yeah. Like what if this thing happened, and then you carry it from there and you have a good performance. Like you've got something like one of the first things that he had produced was based on a short story called The Shrinking Man, and the movie that was made was called The Incredible Shrinking Man. They added the word incredible
because it was.
But it's basically the story. I mean, it doesn't really matter why, but it's like what would happen if you started to shrink little by little and get smaller. And like, what a weird concept, but what a great movie, and all the psychological stuff that comes along with that. It's a classic 50s.
It's classic fiction. 50s, and it was directed by Jack Arnold, who did Tarantula and some other
Creature from the Black
movies.
Lagoon. It came from outer space.
Well, I think Matheson's like strength is that he can make these ideas relatable and grounded, so they're not like these far out ideas and you're standing at a distance going, small guy, big cat, or whatever. It's like he puts you inside of it, so you feel like this is what it would feel like, and you would have the same fears and the same logistical issues that anyone would have. And a lot of these across the board do that, like where he'll have this concept and he brings it to life by making it something we can feel and know what that would be like. So that's what I really like about his stuff.
Well, this scene from The Incredible Shrinking Man is a really good example. It's when he's about maybe a third of the way into his shrinking process, and it's like he's just going nuts with it. It's like, what would you do? It's like you have this terminal disease. When is it going to stop? When are you going to stop shrinking? And should I roll the clip?
Yes.
So great. It's just like, God,
Everything about
it's an
it is
absurd idea, but this
Yeah.
guy is so committed, and the story is so committed to the idea.
Right.
And I love the camera work. Like every
Yeah.
shot of him shot from above, every shot
Yeah.
from his perspective is shot from low. Even if it's not his perspective, you're still seeing the world as like being bigger than you. And every time you see him, everything's smaller. It's
And the
just
gi-
so sad.
And the props, the giant sofa
Yeah.
and chair, and they look because a lot of times you like if you see like Land of the Giants, you go, oh, that just
Yeah.
looks like a prop or
Yeah.
something. But these look
When
like
that
it
big
looks like
hand
he's
comes
really
in.
small. Yeah,
It's so funny.
and also the ending of this is
Oh, yeah.
really so profound.
Yeah.
And only a really good writer can actually make that work. Like he just keeps shrinking and shrinking, and enters this different realm.
Yeah,
it's almost
and
an
how do you
uplifting
end
ending.
that story? It's a
You end is like a atom.
yeah, it's like
yeah,
a
you're
metaphysical ending. It's
Right.
a,
Nothing else.
which is
yeah.
interesting because Richard Matheson kind of really was into metaphysics, and there's
Mhm.
he was he wrote a lot about ghosts and hauntings and supernatural goings on, and he was actually himself he wrote a couple of nonfiction books called The Path, and I think The Path 2 or something, where he talks about metaphysical stuff, like his belief in the supernatural, paranormal, and ghosts and protoplasm and all that stuff. It's interesting. It's kind of like Houdini's type of interest in the afterlife and that kind of thing.
Well, I think
But
that
it's interesting
grounded in
because he
science
wrote
helps.
about that kind of thing. He actually, I think, believed it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a science base, gives it that extra little push of realism that sends these over the top, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that's what
And
you
we
feel
don't need
about
to. We'll just tell two people there's gonna be spoilers, just letting
Yeah.
you know.
Well-
We're gonna mention endings and stuff like that.
Well, this is
Okay.
this is typical. The Incredible Shrinking Man. We think it's like a '50s horror film, but it's elevated to another level, and
Yeah.
it's an unforgettable movie.
Yeah.
You think, oh, it's just gonna be one of these '50s. It's not. And
No,
you can
it's
tell
really
from
well
that
done.
scene, it's really well done. So
And like you said, Jack Arnold, just look up also anything Jack Arnold directed is fun. He's the classic 50s science fiction director. And his films always had a good level of quality. They weren't cheesy, like so many people think 50s science fiction, it's cheesy lasers and bad monsters and stupid. But his movies were always, there was a level of seriousness and quality, and the monsters weren't cheesy. I mean, look at The Creature from the Black Lagoon. That's still one of the most beautiful monsters ever created.
Yeah.
It came from outer space, and but
Gosh,
Richard Matheson worked with really good people because I think they sort of magnetized to each other.
yes.
Yep.
Well,
And
what do
he
you want to do
went on
next?
to,
Next.
he went on to do some Twilight Zone episodes, which everybody
we'll talk
remembers.
about.
Do you remember any of those?
No, I don't remember any.
He
No,
did-
the ones I remember, Twilight Zone episodes I do remember, always seem to have him involved. The ones I do remember. It's
well,
crazy.
he was one of them. Charles Beaumont was another writer that liked his stuff, and of course Rod Serling.
And Rod
stuff.
Serling,
yeah.
So, but this particular one is a classic.
Oh, this
and
one
it's also-
still gives me chills when I think about it. I remember I watched it relatively recently. I remember I don't really remember this one, and I watched it and I was like, this is the episode with that thing that scared the hell out of me. It's like, oh, it's just so creepy. Okay.
deeply chilling to me. This
It's so
and
creepy.
I found a
Again,
scene that-
relatable.
yeah.
Let's play the clip and then we can talk
But this
about
scene just creeps me out to this day. I mean, when
Yeah.
I was cutting this scene this morning, it's like, ugh.
it. Yeah. All right, let's play it.
Hello? What? Who's there? Who's on the line? Who is it? Who's there? Hello? Hello?
Oh, it's so creepy.
That's absolutely terrifying. To
You know, it's
me
funny,
when I
that-
just watch
that is
that
so
by yourself at home.
So scary. And you know what I love about like this kind of genre, what's happening here where someone calls and you're on the phone with them. This idea of someone entering your life from outside, you know, they're not, they can get to you that way, like through the phone, like prank calls are always super creepy to me. That has continued. My fascination and my favorite genres of horror involve the same thing. It goes from phone, it comes to cell phone, it goes to like internet, like any kind of internet or web related horror. I love it. Like any of that stuff that involves some sort of like even like escape room stuff like that involves sort of an extra level of technology that where people can get inside your life but not even really be in the same room with you. That is so creepy to me. Like, so this almost in a way sort of started that genre that has always been super creepy, where here's this woman getting these calls, like what the hell, you know, like and back then, especially, like you can't do call back, you can't do call block, you know, you just keep taking these damn calls. And it was super eerie, but it ends up just being really tragic.
Yeah.
That's what I love too. It starts out scary and then gets even deeper than that.
And it's
just
Jacques
this
Tourneur
scene where
who's
the phone is
director.
hanging there and he's just saying, hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's great acting, voice acting. Whoever was doing that, like really hit it on the
It's
nail
almost
on the
comical. Now you were saying, Mark, who directed it?
Jacques Tourneur, who was he did Cat People and
Night of the Demon.
Night of the Demon and I Walked
So
with
many-
a Zombie and
Some
he's
great
just,
film
you know,
noir stuff. He was
and he
he
keeps
was
the
a
camera
really good
right.
director.
He keeps the camera on the actress there. And
keeps it very
just
intimate, you know, very
simple,
claustrophobic.
Yeah.
It's another example that he's done a few times where he'll have a sequence or a set piece or an entire story that's one person in a room and performing with no other people to interact with, you know, except in this case, she's interacting with this sort of disembodied voice.
Oh, so creepy.
And should we jump around chronologically
Well,
and
let's talk for real quick. Let's just talk a little bit about what this episode was about. I mean, we're not going to care about spoilers. I want to, because I think what's so strong, like we want to show this one thing, is how it ultimately culminates and ends. So
the ending is like the camera, you know, kind of follows the telephone line.
It's a
Because she keeps getting
rainy
these
night.
calls. Her husband has died. She's all alone. She's getting these weird phone calls. She's, you know, she can't really leave her house. You know, she's just really isolated. And so then we have this. They're like trying to figure it out, right? And even I think they try to disconnect the phone line. It still doesn't work. He's still calling. So then they start following the phone lines to find him.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and the phone line has gone down. You know, the phone line, because of the storm, that has gone down and is laid on, you know, on top of this grave, you know, this cemetery, this gravestone, this gravesite, and it's her dead husband's, you know,
so
grave, and so it's really a call from, you know, from the dead. And,
I just remember the creepy scene of just seeing this wire, and it looks so desolate and just terrible, and it's just sort of hanging, and it's on this grave. It's like, oh, God, I'm still goosebumps just saying how creepy that looked. Oh, but just looks super eerie, but also really sad. Like all of a sudden now she wants to keep getting the calls because it's her husband. So,
and now the implications, it's like, wow, where is he? How can he be using a telephone? I love that. I love that idea. Like you were talking about the phone being this sort of invasive thing that allows people to come into your home in a disembodied way. But it also, in those older days when telephones were still kind of new, there were a lot of people who were thinking that telephones or radios can actually communicate with the other side. And there were a lot of people who were like tuning in their radios and claiming that they were hearing ghost voices and you know, listening to the crackling on the telephone and thinking that this was some connection to the other worlds or aliens, you know, like
or
the
radio
TV,
waves
like Poltergeist.
Yes.
They're back.
The smoke.
And you sometimes feel like you can hear things instead.
Yeah.
Right? You guys hear that? Or you hear voices?
No,
in
I have
the
no idea what you're
static?
talking about.
That's just me hearing that? Okay.
The
Excellent.
voice is telling me to burn it all down. No, I don't hear those.
I don't hear those. Okay, next up.
But I mean, should we jump around and show another one that's like an isolation horror that's a
let's do
classic?
that.
Should we jump into that one, or should
All of
we save that
these-
for last?
And also, like, all of these they're all so good. You really can't even put them in order of which is the best or not best. These are all number one, and we're just giving you the list of number ones. So here we go.
And there's more than what we have too.
Oh yeah,
Of
this is only our
course.
top 10.
There's a bunch that he wrote, and in fact, we showed one Twilight Zone episode scene.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote 16 episodes of the Twilight Zone, and
insane.
every one of them is certainly among the best, most memorable episodes. And he also wrote episodes of Thriller, and later for Rod Serling, he wrote a couple of episodes of the Night Gallery.
Yeah.
One of them is a favorite of mine. I don't have a clip from it, but it's a classic kid. John Carradine, old man, tells these kids about a treasure. And again, it's one of those premises you can tell in like 2 sentences, And so that he gives them a treasure map, and they go out looking for this treasure, and they, 10 paces this way, 20 paces from the old rock, and they find the spot, and they dig up the spot, and they dig and dig and dig and dig, and they find this big box down under the ground that's been buried for like 100,000 years or whatever. And they pry off the top of the box, and John Carradine is in the box. And he sits up and he goes, "Surprise!" It's like such a throwaway idea.
Me,
but
were you?
God, that stuck with me when I was a kid.
Oh, that's so funny.
Like, how did that happen?
What's our next one?
And the next one is a classic that everybody of a certain age remembers having nightmares about this. And it's a silly idea, but it works. Who would think that this idea would work? But it has the amazing Karen Black.
Yeah,
and
that helps.
Roll that clip.
Yeah.
What'd you do? Fall off the table? Where'd you go?
That idea, sticking your hand under there.
Where are
Horrifying.
you?
Little bastard.
Well, I guess I found you. At least the tip of your spear. How you got that far back? We're getting warm. Come out, wherever you are.
Those feet.
Is that you, little man? He's gotta be there.
And it's like, what the hell? This
Well,
little
we didn't even
weird
see him in that
doll.
clip. What the
I
hell,
know.
man? Get us a clip where we
That's
see
why I
him.
made one.
We need a clip where we see Zuni fetish. Oh, there he is. He's visiting.
And the director for that is Dan Curtis, who did
Ben.
of course he did Dark Shadows.
Willard.
He's the creator of that, and
The Night Stalker.
Night Stalker, and so he worked with Richard Matheson, and he just knows how to direct that scene. It's about Karen Black.
Yep. Again,
it's
camera work
about-
too. Like
Yeah.
you have this like from
Low to the
across the
ground.
room, super low camera angle, and you're like,
Right,
why is it
right.
so low?
Why is it low
Yeah,
like that?
we know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
And
But
the,
that's an unforgettable. That was a part. Richard Matheson. There's a TV movie. Trilogy of Terror was a TV movie.
That was only one of the movies.
Right.
Short.
Yeah, it was a 3-parter, and
the other two aren't bad. The other two are pretty
Yeah, but they
shocking as well.
They pale.
But this was saved for last because it's so. I remember watching this and just being like, "Oh my god!" Like, you didn't see this stuff on TV back in 1974. You just didn't see it, and that's why this is so unforgettable. And it's been remade or done a couple other times, but this is the original one because Karen Black is so good.
Yeah, Karen Black just completely sells this whole idea.
Mm-hmm.
She's so real and so natural in her performance. I always love the way she's kind of just like, laughing and her that one line is she's like, "Is that you, little man?" What a stupid idea that would be the doll running across the floor.
We would never assume that it was,
but it is.
It is. Yes, your worst nightmare came true.
And she gradually realizes what's happening, and she's so good at being, absolutely terrorized by something that she cannot comprehend. It's like, how is this happening? Right. And that's a thing. That's an element of a lot of Richard Matheson stories too. It is the reaction of the character to the impossible situation. The classic, the other Twilight Zone episode that we've talked about before, the one with William Shatner in the airplane, and he sees, a man on the wing tearing up the propeller, I guess it was a propeller back then, but destroying the engine. And he's like, stewardess, there's a man on the wing. And she's like, what?
There's an element of absurdity to a lot of his stuff, but he pulls it through because there's a sort of element of disbelief at first. Like, this is just silly. What am I thinking? It's so fun. Like, it's almost funny. And then it goes over the edge where it stops being funny really fast.
Yes. And it explores how someone might really react to hearing, that somebody just saw a man on the wing of an airplane.
What?
And it's like,
what
would happen if that happened?
He was on a plane, obviously, or he was, he saw a crazy doll, or he was driving a car in the middle of nowhere, like in the desert, and which we can do next. It's like, what if I saw something weird on this plane? What if I'm driving along and something, this truck, it's just, that's how he writes the story. If you have that, then you go, I'm off. And then
anytime something weird happens like that, there's this moment where you kind of freeze and you process, and it doesn't seem real. And he really does a great job of just normal people, something really extreme is happening, and there's this sort of moment of like, what? And it's that coming to terms, I think, that really brings it home to that relatability. Is how this is how you would react. You'd almost laugh at first and go, no, this isn't. This is not happening. And then eventually
they're all believable. They're all believable in the story, and that's how. If you can pull that off, then you're in as an audience member.
And he tends to get involved with really talented people, like you mentioned, Jacques Tournier and Jack Arnold,
Spielberg.
And this guy, what's his name?
And that's man's name was
Steven Spielberg, I think, and he was a young director who might have gone on to better things if he had managed his career a little better.
I know he kind of faded off into obscurity.
He was young. I mean, this is like one of the first things. This is his first feature, right?
He came out of the box hot.
This was 1971. He was probably 22 or 23. I remember this is another made-for-TV ABC Suspense Theater. And I remember like they got a big review in the Sunday paper, and my dad saying, we have to watch this. They're talking about how really good this movie is called Duel.
You have to watch it because you can't watch it later.
And I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old and I watched it, and well, here's the scene.
Let's see
it's suspenseful, and this is one of the many incredible scenes in it, I think.
To each other,
bye, Hong Kong. Beep, beep.
Honking at each other. That's right.
That's really good. That was so creepy.
For years I was afraid of trucks on the highway. I mean, literally, really.
I'm still afraid of trucks on the highway. I'll never get over that.
The cool thing about this movie is that what you just saw is the premise. It's a truck threatening an average guy in a car,
harassing a guy in a car.
And you cannot stop watching this movie. It's absolutely great.
And then they did a pretty good job with that exact premise in Joyride. I don't know if you remember that. Was it John Dahl? I think
John Dahl, who's a great director.
Great, Steve Zahn. It's like that was another great one where they're just, we're just goofing around. It's like, is this truck following us? Is it following us? Is this guy messing with? Like, there's that sort of moment of like, this is not happening. again. But they did a good job of it too. And like that's the kind of thing, this kind of stuff we take for granted every day. We're driving in cars, there's trucks around, there's people around, like that kind of idea that this can kind of take a turn like that is a super scary premise. And he does such a great job of just making it seem so normal, bright daylight, not scary, like out in the open road, beautiful blue sky, and yet this horrifying thing is happening.
Yeah.
Well,
and then Dennis Weaver's character in his bright orange, is it a javelin?
No, that's a Plymouth Valiant, because I have
Valiant.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And it's really bright orange, so it stands out everywhere it is. Like it's a great choice for color for a car.
That's what made the truck mad, I think.
Yeah, I would.
Well,
do
I think
the
biggest thing about Matheson in this is like he is a salesman late for a meeting, so he's in his own world. He's got a wife who's there's problems in marriage, so he's in his own world, and all of a sudden he's taken out by this thing totally out of left field.
Yeah,
the truck that's trying to kill him. All of a sudden, all his other problems disappear, and he's just trying to survive, not die.
And the idea, like you said a truck that's trying to kill him, that's important for this film. It's not the guy in the truck, like you said before. It's not the person in the truck in this movie. It's like the truck is a shark. It's a predator. And
the truck has doll's eyes.
Yeah. It's like the truck wants to kill him.
And they did try to do a lot of other films. There was one called Killdozer that came out, which was the same sort of thing. A bullet in the car and the hearse.
What was the thing that Stephen King directed his one time? Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive.
I love Stephen King, but nope. Nope. Christine, great. Christine was great though, but that wasn't directed by Stephen King.
Christine is great, actually. John Carpenter film of a living vehicle.
So we can take these things that we think, like cars in a way are kind of like we're in complete control. We feel like because they're our machine, we operate them, they do. I love the idea that these machines turn on us. I think that's an amazing idea.
And the idea of, again, it's a single person up against a faceless, almost supernatural entity. Yeah. Dennis Weaver, carries this whole film like, Karen Black carries Trilogy of Terror.
Yeah.
It's us and him together on the road. And that's the other fear is how vulnerable you are when you are out, and I imagine, imagine it would be, I think about it sometimes, how scary must it be for a woman to be out driving alone, not only could you be attacked, but other countless horrible things could happen. But in this case,
that's how women feel doing anything, walking around, driving around, looking around, like everywhere we go, we have that standing over our heads is that threat of possibility.
And this is a sort of embodiment of that. And but it also kind of affects, in this one, it's kind of a fear for men too, because
I like that it was a man. They get a little taste of it.
Yeah.
That weird, ominous, faceless threat.
Or something that just won't stop coming after you. This
and
thing
you don't
is
know,
harassing
like you said,
you.
it's a truck. It's not
and
even
it will
a person.
not stop.
Yeah.
It just wants you dead. It absolutely will not stop until you are dead. The Terminator.
It will not stop ever.
But it's like the Jaw, the shark in Jaws. It's a thing. It's a relentless, doll-eyed killer. That's you never see the person in the truck. I think you see his boots or something.
Yeah.
You see his arm a couple of times at the very end when he's trying to shift the gear before it goes over the cliff. But
these little tiny moments of humanizing it, but it isn't about the person at all. It's about the ominous threat,
And there's a scene where he's at a diner and he's trying to figure out, one of the truckers is in here and he's trying to go and talk to the people, but you never see you don't know who it is. He might be there. So it's just really great.
Scene. I almost got that scene because it ends up with, him getting pissed off at this guy in the diner, and then all of a sudden the truck outside cranks up and drives away. It's like, oh, it's not him. And then he runs out the door, and there's this beautiful tracking shot of Dennis Weaver running after the truck down the middle of the street. And like,
he just wants to put a face to the threat. He wants to make it human. And that makes total sense to see this as Spielberg's first movie, and then to go on to Jaws makes complete sense. It is basically the same idea.
He shot that in 13 days up off Route 14 up past Lancaster. And
that's amazing.
It's great. It's great.
Cool.
Out near Vasquez Rocks in that area.
Yeah. Spielberg.
That way.
Yeah.
All right.
What's next on our
promising young
Richard
next on our Matheson list? And it's kind of interesting. Most of these are all just about one person alone for the most part. Most of them are about a person having experience on their own and doubting their own sanity. So what else we got?
One thing that he did too, that he also did, there's the supernatural horror stuff that he did, and then Duel, which is, I guess you could say it was supernatural if you want to, but it's not really. It's just in realism terms, it's a guy in a truck.
Yeah. Because they keep it so distant, it feels like it's the truck who's possessed or something. Because they keep the human element away for so long.
Yeah.
But he did some things for Roger Corman that were based on. He wrote the screenplays based on the Edgar Allan Poe stories for Roger Corman. So he kind of started off doing these sort of they're low budget, but they actually look really nice. I really love Roger Corman. I mean, people always talk about him in terms of his low budget and cost cutting, corner cutting, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I actually really like Roger Corman films. And again, it's an example of a talent attracting another talent. Roger Corman's early science fiction black and white films are super cheap and, like Poverty Row production. But the stories are interesting. Even like Attack of the Crab Monsters has some really interesting, creepy undertones to it. And Not of This Earth is a really cool movie. But he did these Edgar Allan Poe films, and Matheson wrote the scripts for them. So they're based on Edgar Allan Poe, but they're creepy, they're fun, and they're really interesting. And there's one called Tales of Terror that's got what's his name, Vincent Price and Peter Lorre and whatnot. A couple of people like that.
Some obscure actor.
But here's a fun scene. It kind of gives you a taste of what that era and what Roger Corman was up to, and how beautiful the colors are. They're like the American Hammer films in a way, and just really fun movies.
And you'll stay.
If you really want me to.
Yes. And you've come home at last.
At last.
At last.
That's super creepy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great way to depict a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
The music. Creepy ghost going down the hallway. Oh, there's a door. Oh, right through the door.
Right through the door.
Jaws.
Yep. Look at that hands. That's so
It
good.
really is like Jaws. The ghost touched me. I love Vincent Price's face.
Vincent Price,
Oh my God,
yeah.
those blue eyes. So great.
Classic.
They have
Vincent Price was in another
So many good ones.
Richard Matheson story that maybe we'll get to it in a second. I want to talk about ghosts right now in Richard Matheson. The Roger Corman stuff, it's Edgar Allan Poe, so he didn't really write the stories, but he was able to sort of update them and make them sing,
and also make them be able to shoot them on a low budget. I mean, he's
Yes.
saying, "Listen, we got to do this. Shoot this in a week in 2 sets. Go.
Yep.
Pare it down.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what he did with these.
But another film along the same lines that is something that I think is also very scary, but it's so outlandish and so shockingly crazy, and the set dressing and everything is so overblown. But I love this movie so much. The Haunting of Hell House.
The Legend of Hell.
The Legend of Hell House, right? Not
Right,
the
yeah.
Haunting of.
You're thinking of the Michael
Haunting-
Flanagan version.
Hill House or Hell House.
Yeah,
or-
they all-
Haunting of Hell House.
Yeah.
Hill House.
Yeah,
What
this
house?
is
This
great.
one
This
is The
a great
Legend
one.
of Hell House,
Yes.
and Roddy McDowall, and
Robin McDowell.
Ah,
and
he's so
so
great.
many-
It's my favorite Roddy McDowall.
yeah.
He's so cute in
but
it.
this is a classic scene. It's one of many classic scenes in this movie, but for some reason I picked this scene. Get to see the lovely decor of the Belasco house.
Yeah, it's pretty stony.
Yeah.
That's a marble. Everything
Pamela
seems really
Franklin.
big. Who's in my bed? Always a great reveal. Always when you pull the blanket off.
And I love the little time stamp across the bottom through this movie.
And the music.
Yeah, and the music.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got Roddy McDowell in here.
A little bit.
I was visited by Belasco's son again this afternoon.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very little bit.
Yeah.
Very
It's
It's
little
a
bit.
very atmospheric film. I
Mhm.
can't remember who directed this off the top of my head, but it's just very much of its time too. I think it was 1973 when that was made.
Yeah,
And,
it's so lush too.
yeah.
Like it's always a favorite genre. I say this all the time. My favorite genre, even though I have like 100, it's like that the big lush mansion where bad shit's happening in it. Like just
Yeah.
that the surroundings being so beautiful, but also creepy because everything just seems way too big and dark. And there's all these hallways. You don't know what's at the end of them. A lot of closed doors. Like there's something about giant mansions that sort of gives me the creeps a little bit because you just aren't in control of the
Sure.
house at all.
Well, this one is a classic giant haunted mansion. It's if you haven't read the book, it's definitely a great book to read.
Mhm.
As are all of his books, honestly. The books that this one is based on, goes into a lot more detail about Belasco, and it's a little bit more adult content, And they kind of hint at the idea in the movie that there was a lot of debauchery and obscene things happened in this house, and people were abused in inhuman ways and things like, they kind of allude to nasty shenanigans in the house. And the decor is very much like a sort of a depraved bordello kind of
Yes.
decor. And something, it's one of those great sets that has those dark corners and hallways that they go nowhere, and darkness and shadow and weird angles. It's almost like the Shirley Jackson, there weren't any right angles, and
Yep.
and they kind of play with the layout of the house a little bit, and it just seems wrong and weird and disorienting a little bit. And
Yeah.
It was directed by John Hugh.
John Huff.
John Huff.
And he did Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
you think we should do some cool, crazy movies from that time, like some cool 70s
crime dramas.
That would be awesome. Like, remember, what was it called? Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
Oh yeah.
That's a classic.
Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. Those would be great ones to cover because those are a genre you just don't see them done that way at all anymore. They are long gone. You can't do it. It's like there's something about the remoteness of it. You're cut off in a way. It's kind of like Duel. It's like these people out on the road and there's no cell phones. You're just literally just out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Sure. Those are
I
great
love
fun.
those.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's
he,
a great movie.
but-
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
really good movie. Legend of Hell House is a great movie.
Yeah, it's a really
Real
cool one.
70s feel to it.
The another thing he did in the 70s too was something that I watched when I was a kid and loved it. Was this movie, The Night Stalker, that came out of nowhere, and it had this fully realized character named Kolchak that was played by
Darren McGavin.
McGavin, the Christmas Story dad.
And it was originally a movie
Yeah,
that became a series. Yes.
It was
And
two movies.
I remember when I was a little kid and that came on TV, and at the same time we were watching Night Stalker, we were staying at this hotel with my mom. We were moving, and all of a sudden, and Dad wasn't there. I don't know where the hell he was. So we're just a woman alone with two babies, and this guy starts banging on the door, going, "I know you're in there!" Bam, bam, bam. You're cheating. I know you're there. Like just completely freaky, and I'm like,
Whoa.
"What?" So every time I think of the Night Stalker, I think of this really crazy, really could have gone bad, but fortunately he didn't get in moment.
Yeek.
Ugh.
Oh my God!
Really creepy.
Well, yeah, The Night Stalker again. It's Dan Curtis, and it's another ABC suspense movie along with Duel.
Those were
and all.
good.
They were great. They were
So good.
every Friday night, 8:30 to 10. They were on, and this was great because did really well. And then they did the sequel, and they realized, they're kind of like a pilot for the show.
Yeah.
I'd also like to point out, like, why is my mom letting these little tiny babies watch this show? I'm just, sometimes.
Well, Last
Hi,
House
Mom.
on the left.
Hi. She took us to the Last House on the left. We were infants.
Yes.
That's what makes it cool, though. She was a cool mom. She let us go see scary movies.
Yeah, that's very cool.
But Kolchak was actually kind of like a precursor to the X-Files. His
totally.
Shtick was he was a sort of a
reporter,
sort of a wild reporter guy who, really great performance by Darren McGavin as this guy.
He had that cool hat.
You love this guy. Mm-hmm. He's so cool, and he's just got such a personality.
Yeah.
And his thing is he keeps stumbling into these horrible, creepy, supernatural conspiracies where, people are getting killed and the media is trying to cover it up. And, there's the first one is literally a vampire story. And of course, nobody believes him. And he goes to the Universal backlot. I think it's a Universal backlot, and breaks into this house. And because
he broke into the Universal backlot.
Yeah. You can tell because there's no utility poles. That's the dead giveaway. But he goes to his I think it takes place in Chicago, right?
It's a Chicago. Yeah, he works for Chicago paper.
Chicago by way of Universal backlot.
Yeah,
and the sequel, he goes to Vegas, I think.
Right,
The Night Strangler.
The Night Strangler.
But he's driving around in his '64 Mustang convertible. He's just a cool character.
And wasn't the Night Stalker serial killer based on this guy's name? Wasn't this show? Didn't they kind of play off of each other because people let's call him the Night Stalker? The Night Stalker is scary, right. So it kind of entered this sort of strain. I'm going to probably get lots of hate mail about getting this wrong, but I feel like that's the thing where you get the pop culture informing just almost like in the background. It infuses everything. So everybody hears the word Night Stalker. They get it. They know what that means. It's a killer. It's a thing they've heard. Sometimes they may not have seen the movie. They don't know what the movie is. They never heard of Kolchak, but they know this phrase, Night Stalker.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
But it was a show that lasted for 1 year, then it was canceled. But it was a great
season.
They should bring that back.
It's like
they kind of tried and it didn't.
Good. They're all good.
They're all good. There's some are better than others. It's a little shaky. There's a few sort of slightly shaky episodes. There's one about a robot. They were
weren't always
trying.
good.
And there was the end, the Spanish Moss Man, and what's that?
It started fading out towards the end, but the first 5 or 6 episodes are great.
And the first 2 movies. And this is a clip from the first movie, which is just an example of how it was shot and the pacing of it. And Kolchak is this reporter, and he's broken into this guy's house who he thinks it might be a vampire. Oh, sure enough.
Oh no, this is one of these clips that has no dialogue.
Yeah.
He found a coffin in a house.
Yes.
That music.
What?
And it's got dirt in it.
Last thing I would do is open a coffin in a house. No way.
That's the first thing you would do, Cappy. Come on.
That's right. It would be the first thing I would do.
It's like, where's my iPhone?
I'll take a picture of this dirt. Again, love the hat.
Yeah. The great music again. And
the music
it's very Dan Curtis.
Evocative. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love this where he closes the curtains a little bit like, ooh, I should.
Oh, I can't leave these open. Somebody know I'm here. Close the curtains.
Close. Yeah.
But that's Kolchak, the Night Stalker. They're definitely worth watching, those 2 movies especially, and the series. The whole thing is fun, honestly, but because of Darren McGavin, because of the cast and the guy that plays his boss is great.
They remade Night Stalker.
In Oakland.
Yes.
And ABC. I did the key art for it, but it starred Stuart Townsend.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
And Yeah, and it was not good because first of all, he was way too good looking. He lived in this super cool modern house.
Yeah.
Like the charm of it was that this guy was not slick, that he was
Yeah.
kind of a little
He's
rough
kinda
around the
bumbling
edges.
guy.
Yeah, he's kind of a dork, and no one took him really seriously. And they made this way too slick, where I feel like it could have gone a lot like lower on every level, like where he was more of a misfit. They could have got a more scruffy actor.
Right.
Maybe even an older person who's kind of past the prime of his life, unlike Stuart Townsend. And so it's like, but I was really excited about it because I love Monster of the Week. I loved X-Files. I love Buffy. Like I just love that whole format. And I was really bummed that it didn't work because I feel like these people, they took the Night Stalker, the name and the logo and the awareness, and then they didn't bring what made them great to the property. I feel like they got people involved who were more about like doing a cool TV show and not a horror series. And so anytime TV, this is, now it's like streaming's all over the place, horror. It's like people are getting it now because people want to see horror. They just played it too safe. Yeah. And you don't want to play it safe. So like you're updating the Night Stalker. You don't want to be less sophisticated than the original series. Yes. So I was always a little disappointed about that, but I think
Kolchak needs to be the guy that played, it needs to be the dad from Christmas Story. He needs to be this sort of bumbling guy that if he tells you something, you're like, oh, come on.
I would love to see the actor. Is it J.T. Simmons? What's it? It's Simmons.
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons. Yeah. He would be perfect Kolchak. Just a little off.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
that's a good
people.
Idea.
I'll pitch that.
Casting folks out there.
My idea, copywritten. J.K. Simmons was like, what?
Another supernatural type of thing that Richard Matheson kind of helped to invent and popularize in some ways. There's a movie called Last Man on Earth, again with Vincent Price, and it's 1964, which is before Night of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. And this movie, I think, somebody can probably prove me wrong, but I think this may be the first sort of modern zombie film in a way. I mean, it's based on his book, I Am Legend, right? Of which there are I think 3 movies, the Will Smith one, most recently.
So bad.
And then before that, there was the Omega Man, which we'll show a clip from a bit later, a very different style of movie. Yeah. But this one is with Vincent Price, and it's the idea of, it really is a great, again, a single isolated character confronting a horrible threat. It's the basic premise is everybody on the earth has died except for a few people, a few normal people who weren't infected by this horrible thing that turned them into zombies. I don't think they use the word zombies, but they are basically the lumbering living dead. And the concept is that they are the new breed, the new race. And that these people, Vincent Price and Charlton Heston and Will Smith are the old school. They're the ones that are on their way out of the evolutionary process.
So primitive.
Yeah.
And I agree. Humans are very primitive. We could use an upgrade.
But zombies are not that much better than us.
I was gonna say they didn't upgrade; they kind of degraded. But okay, let's see it.
But this is from the Vincent Price one, the Last Man on Earth, 1964, and he's of course great in it.
More curtains.
Yeah. And more disembodied voice calling his name.
Zuni fetish style again, solitary.
Yeah.
Yes.
You hear that whispering?
Just barely. That was me. Sorry.
You don't like that.
Who is it? Who's there?
And just a side note, his wife has died previously.
Oh, yes. No tie into this turning knob at all. She does not look good. That's creepy.
Yeah.
His face. Oh, that's so creepy. Her eye, droopy eye.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. That's how zombies see.
But this is his reality. He lives in this world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Attacked by zombies.
Everything's boarded up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morgan.
They dress well for the most part.
Morgan.
We're going to kill you, Morgan.
After we beat up this Edsel.
This is very close to the book. I mean, the story.
Yeah.
The book story. Where they're harassing him while he stays inside.
And they just stay outside and they torment him all day.
Right.
Come out.
Join us. That would be super depressing.
Yeah.
Gosh.
You know, it's funny because Vincent Price looks like this big strapping guy. Like, you know, he's so when you see him, I'm always a little surprised by how high pitched his voice is when it comes out.
Yes. He's
It's
got
like,
that
"Eh?"
voice. Huh?
Like, I expect him to go, what? And it's like, "Eh."
Yeah.
It's a great story. I mean,
loved him
he
so
wrote
much.
that under. He had a the screenplay is credited to a Logan Swanson, but that's Richard Matheson. He wrote the screenplay to this.
Yeah.
Nice.
Based on his story.
Very
So,
cool.
Based on I Am
really good.
Legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, best on. Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
then in 1971, there was another version of it that was produced that is actually kind of a fun movie. It sort of loses its thread near the end, but it's an interesting premise. It's got Charlton Heston, so it's at least got that kind of maniac Charlton Heston energy, And Charlton Heston with a machine gun.
Is he wearing clothes? I just
He has his shirt off a lot in the
Okay.
film, actually. Yeah,
That's
it's one
Charlton
of those.
Heston for sure.
He has his shirt off a lot. in
A
this
lot
movie.
when you think about it. I didn't really think about that. We started doing this.
But it's called The Omega Man, and it's a 70s science fiction-y kind of film. Interestingly, they filmed it. Unlike some of these other films, it's not bound to the backlot. I mean, you can tell if you're savvy, if you've worked on all the backlots like I have, I can spot them a mile away. I know which one and I know where they filmed it, what street, But it's like it goes from real Los Angeles city sequences to backlot. And but the sequences that they shot in the streets of Los Angeles, they shot them on like early Sunday morning when back in the olden days when there wasn't traffic all the time.
Yeah.
And they were
Can't
able
get
to
away with
get
that
these
now.
empty streets in downtown LA, like in these some certain areas of downtown and like it looks like Wilshire and things like that. But no traffic. And of course in a couple of shots you can see a little car in the background, that was before they were able to digitally remove things.
Yeah.
And a couple of little movements. There's one shot that looks like maybe that's a person standing in the background. But the idea is, it looks good. It looks like an abandoned city, abandoned Los Angeles. And poor Charlton Heston is all alone and, being tormented every night by the zombies that only come out at night. And I have a clip here from when he's out just kind of goofing around and he suddenly realizes, oh crap, it's almost nighttime. I have to hurry home.
Yeah.
Oops, I forgot.
Before it gets dark.
Oh, he's got a jacket on. Comedy!
Same guy who did the music for Prisoner, if you couldn't tell.
Machine gun. That poor car. Oh, it's hot in here. Let's take the shirt off.
Oh, what a day.
Oh, this typical drive home.
So is
With
that true,
crazy
Ron?
people.
The same music from The Prisoner. It sounds just like it. I mean,
I know.
That was just awful.
Yeah.
Ron
That
Green.
was so-
Ron
That
Greener.
music was so wrong for that
Yeah,
scene.
I know.
There's nothing right about any of that. What the hell
I mean,
that
he was really good with the Prisoner music was awesome, and he did some really cool other music, but doesn't fit this sequence at all. There's a few little awkward things about this movie, but they tried, and it has a style, has a certain late 60s, early 70s style of science fiction, and
maybe we can include it in our crazy Married Dirty Larry or whatever that's called. Cool 70s craziness.
Yeah, groovy 70s.
That's right. 70s were groovy.
But those are and I don't have a clip from the Will Smith one, but
don't plug. That was just no need.
Yeah,
I hated that movie.
They
got it so wrong. Everything about that was wrong.
CGI was really rough in it.
Yeah.
Let alone that horrible animal death. This long, extended, terrible thing where they kill the dog. Yeah. Sorry, spoilers, but not. Ugh. Terrible, terrible scene.
Yeah.
And the monsters were stupid looking.
Yeah, they were like movement, dancer.
They were like dancers with CGI.
That just blew it for me. It's like, I can tell these are like movement people. It's not like they should have gotten real people to walk.
People doing creepy shit.
Yeah. That's very weirder to see these monsters walking like normal people.
Of course.
But this story I think is great because I love the idea of like you're the only person left. First of all, that's horrifying in general.
Yeah.
And then to have this constant threat coming at you, like you got to have everything down. You got to have it. Can't be out at nighttime. You got to make sure you have food and everything. You got to make sure you're safe in your house, that they can't get in. There's all these little like weaknesses here and there. You got to figure out. I mean, that alone, again, the isolation idea. I mean, he does a lot of that. I guess that to me is what makes them so cool. Is that the isolation and dealing with it yourself is super creepy.
And the twist being like, what would happen if you were the last man on Earth? And the last human, the last normal human, and you're out during the day and you see another person out during the day. And so that's where the story kind of takes a twist. And that's where it kind of goes downhill, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's interesting in this clip, he's driving a Mustang, a convertible Mustang.
Just like so cute.
Did. So
that's right. They like those, I guess.
Probably stay away from the convertibles if you're trying to keep away from zombies. I go for a sedan, Or
I think he loses it pretty soon after that scene. But Richard Matheson wrote another film that came out in the 80s that was, I think, 1980, and Christopher Reeve, and it's just
Jane Seymour.
Oh, and Jane Seymour, of course, the lovely, beautiful.
Stunning.
Jane Seymour, who you could easily fall in love with a photograph of.
She's amazing.
It's a time travel story, which I love time travel stories. And this is a Richard Matheson time travel story. And what's interesting to me about it is the fact that it doesn't use a machine. It doesn't really use science. It almost, again, uses metaphysics. And Christopher Reeve falls in love with an old photograph of a woman from long, long ago, long dead, ancient old photograph. But he falls in love with her picture somehow in some mystical, lovers across time kind of way. And he's obsessed with her, and he wants to go back in time, and he starts researching all these sort of metaphysical ways to time travel. You kind of think of like astral projection type stuff. Yeah. And he finds somebody, and he actually, you have to completely engage yourself in the time, and you have to only have things of the time. And if you're reminded of your own time, you'll get pulled back into your own time. So you have to really discipline yourself. And it's actually a really interesting movie. It's a little bit of, using today's eyes, it's a little bit of a weird, almost stalkery thing when he goes back chasing Jane Seymour through
It's funny
time.
when you look back on it. They even this is totally off of Matheson, but Valley Girl, which seems so cute and adorable at the time, super creepy. The total stalker.
And all those John Hughes movies.
Yes, John Hughes, very stalkery.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never liked John Hughes though. I mean, we can talk about John Hughes later, but never
we'll do a
liked
John Hughes episode.
But this movie's not that bad. It's just, it's got Christopher Reeve making these moony eyes at Jane Seymour.
Yeah.
And just like, if I were being stared at like that by someone, I'd be like, could you stop staring at me like that? That's weirding me
But
out.
it's very much of its time. It's very romantic.
Yeah.
And it's got this great John Barry score that is just
beautiful score
and stunningly beautiful. And
I just loved this movie.
Yes,
it's not a bad movie. I don't want to put people off of it, and it's just I think it just kind of was weird to me that he fell in love with a photograph of her and was so obsessed with the photograph and went back in time and walks into her life out of nowhere and basically says, "I'm so in love with you."
Well, I think because he created his own sort of time loop. So he was in love with her because he actually knew her because he'd gone back in time. So he was of the time. So when he went back in time, he was basically just fulfilling that back in time. So he did kind of know her. I don't know. It's a weird conflict. The time travel kind of scrambles my brain.
And I guess in the idea of a romantic Gothic science fiction story, it really does have kind of a steampunk vibe to it. It's and maybe we can forgive it for being overly romantic or romanticized, and because it does use this.
You have to go with it. If you go with it, and the John Barry score really helps me in this movie. Honestly, with you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's
here's a little clip from it.
Okay.
The first thing I intend to do for you.
You've already done.
Well, the second thing then.
What?
Buy you a new suit.
I don't understand. Nobody
I
seems
love
like my
that
suit.
he got the fashion just a little bit wrong.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think my suit's terrific. I mean, what's wrong with this? I don't care. So what if it's 10 years old?
And a person from that time would know.
15?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if you're
I
10 years off in
fabulous.
fashion, it looks
Machine.
really outdated.
It's really great. See, it's first-class condition. The sleeves fit. It's pretty good for me because my arms are about 9 feet long. And got pockets everywhere. I could pull rabbits out of here. Oh, yeah, this is the best
He's
part.
so
There's a special coin compartment for emergency.
1970. He ruined it.
Richard.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
He got lost.
Richard.
He broke the spell. Oh my God. That was so tragic.
He got thrown out of
the
time.
Why even be alive, right?
Yeah. It was that was such a tragic, stupid
penny. Because we got caught up in it too. We want to stay back in that time. So when that happened, we're like, no.
Yeah.
You think everything's so happy and good and
it was so
everything's
perfect.
fine.
She had to ask about the clothes.
Yeah.
It's her fault.
But it's a fun movie. It's an interesting
fun.
movie. There's interesting time travel trickery in there. It was
really fun performances.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
By those two actors in their prime,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Really cool.
Jane Seymour is still in her prime though. Have you seen her lately?
She always looks good.
She's just still a stunner.
So good.
There was something in this movie that I remember when I saw it, it occurred to me, and it was a cool time travel paradox. I can't remember exactly how it happens. Maybe you guys remember, but she gives him a watch as a gift.
Yes.
And then he takes that watch into how does it happen? It's like she gives him the watch and then he gives it to her when he goes back in time. Or vice versa.
And then I think she brings it to him as an old woman.
As an old woman, she gives him back
the
watch.
The watch.
Oh, she gives.
And then he takes it back to right. It was like a weird.
I think he meets her before he goes back in time. She's this old lady.
Yeah.
Gives him a watch.
That's how he finds out.
And then he realizes it was her.
Mm-hmm.
So he takes the watch from her, and then when he goes back in time, he gives the watch to her as a gift, which she then carries her whole life and then gives it to this young man that she remembers.
Right.
And so what occurred to me was the fact that watch was never made in a factory. It was never made in a watch factory. It just continues to cycle around and around from him to her and then back to him and then back to her and then back to him. You know what I mean? It's a time travel paradox that is pretty interesting to think about.
Yeah.
It's
Trippy.
it's like that idea of a scientist in the future going back in time to give his young self the plans for how to build a time machine so that he can go into the future, and then so who created the plans for the time machine,
Well, the guy from the future, right?
No, because he got it from his,
Oh, I see. Oh, because he got it from the young.
Yeah.
But the watch part, it would seem to me that, well, it's impossible to talk about this stuff.
I see.
but-
Time travel messes me up. We've done this before. Where we
Yes.
did an episode about predestination and
primer.
primer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even just trying to talk about it, I mean, it probably was our most confused episode. We just could not like intelligently discuss it.
I took,
Yeah.
I
It was
took,
so
I took a
confusing.
6-hour. I took a 6-hour nap after that episode.
Oh my god, my brain is so tired.
Yeah.
And just now, I'm already tired just trying to dissect this like 2-second
Yeah.
scene. Oh god,
But it's a
But,
fun
you know-
movie. If you don't take it to, like if you try to
Yeah.
think about the watch,
It's a
of
totally
gravy, but
fun,
it's-
cheesy movie.
It's a
Yeah.
light,
Yeah.
romantic
fun.
film with two very
Mhm.
good-looking leads.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Richard Matheson.
And,
Does a
Richard
little bit of
Matheson
everything.
also, I mean, it's like your pretty great resume that this guy has. But there was a couple of moments when he did some things that I don't know.
Hey, the shark is so cute.
Love these
Is that
reactions
Dennis
here.
Quaid?
Yeah.
The gossip. Best
Look at
Armstrong.
their faces.
Slow motion is scarier.
And it was in 3D, so that you can imagine that was probably floating
yeah.
into the theater
Like, I got it right now.
with the
Wow.
horrible special effects.
Well, 3D when it's done this way, 2D doesn't ever really work.
Yeah. But then later in the film, I did a cut here. Later in the film, everything's okay because he blows up.
For God's sake, they didn't even have a different ending.
And his jaws
Hey,
come
man.
out into the theater.
That's not cool, man.
I know.
Oh my God, that's
And they
just,
float in the theater in front of your face.
Matheson wasn't always great.
Well,
People
I
got
guarantee
paid the bills.
He wrote that script. He wrote that script before the movie was
Yeah.
ever made. So I will.
So it's not his fault the effects were terrible.
Yeah, not his
No, of
fault.
course not.
And like I've said before, I'll bet you if you read Richard Matheson's first draft of Jaws 3D, it's probably really good. And somebody else, a bunch of other people stuck their
My phone.
there was a budget.
Stuck their hands into it and,
And Jaws 2 was directed by Janat Swark, who actually directed Somewhere in Time. So there's always,
Right.
there's always some connection.
Again,
Yeah.
though, no matter who's involved, who writes it, you cannot beat the first Jaws. No one making shark movies has even come close. There's
No.
been a couple good ones though that are a little different. Like Open Water was a pretty great shark film.
There's
but
one called
mostly-
Great White that's coming out. That's an Australian.
Yeah, and what was the really bad one, Meg? Oh, God, that was
Oh yeah,
just-
the Meg or
yeah,
something
I was
like
so
that.
excited about that. And it was just
No.
god awful.
Yeah.
They got
Yeah.
everything wrong. I mean, for some reason, people can't figure out why Jaws was great. But this isn't about Jaws. This is about Richard Matheson.
Yeah.
Well,
I
the
will
thing,
get off my
the
soapbox.
story of Jaws, talking about Richard Matheson and great storytelling, the problem with shark movies is the solution to the shark, the shark problem, get out of the water.
It's easy.
And that's
Right.
what was so brilliant about the first Jaws movie is that it's so much like so many people's response to the pandemic. It's like, oh, there is no shark. There is no problem. There's no, and that's why people were in the water. They were in the water because they were denying, denying the science, and they were denying
Yeah, but the
smart people.
politicians said it was okay.
The
So we're going to
politicians
go
said-
out there into the water because, we got to make
Yeah.
money.
That's why it works. That's why it works.
That's why the movie
That's why it
works.
works.
And anytime
Yeah.
you do a sequel, you can't recreate that reason for people getting into the water.
That's
and
why
that-
I feel like you don't need to kill a shark to solve the problem of the
Right.
shark killing people. You just let it swim away, people. It doesn't hang out if there's no food.
get
Just
out
buy
of the
it.
water.
Don't
Wear
kill
a
sharks.
mask.
Just don't.
Well,
Wear a
going
mask.
to Richard Matheson, I'll
Don't
just
kill
say
sharks
that-
and wear a mask.
Yeah.
Going back to Matheson, I'll just say one of the reasons like his Twilight Zone stuff works is because he's all about the twist ending in a lot of his
Yes.
Twilight
Mhm.
Zone stuff.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite ones we can talk about, Third from the Sun, is a great Twilight
Yes.
Zone where you think you're on Earth and they're
Yeah.
trying to escape their planet. And it's like these people are and they get into a spaceship and they're going to Earth, the third planet from the sun.
Yeah.
So they're somewhere else. And that's I remember that blew my head off too. It's like, and then you watch it again, you realize, oh yeah, the car sounds a little different. The car has a weird rocket sound, and they're just saying little things. So anyway, I just want to mention that particular episode because that was just one that really floored me. And that's what Richard Matheson did to me as a kid. I always got freaked out by his stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
that
Another one
relatability.
I'd like to bring up from Twilight Zone that is called The Invaders. It's got Agnes Moorehead. It's another situation where it's one character in an isolated situation being sort of tormented by a small thing that is made terrifying by the context,
Almost comical.
Almost
comical. Then it goes too far.
It's a goofy looks like a little spaceman that's tormenting her. And the spoiler, I mean, it's like this spaceship crashes, a tiny spaceship crashes in her farmhouse. And there's no dialogue in this episode either. It's just her. There's a little bit of dialogue at the end when it's revealed that these are actually Earth astronauts that crashed on this planet, and she's this giant woman on this planet. And it's like, I love those kind of twists, that
he was great.
Matheson twist,
So good.
And there's so much to watch for his stuff. So it's out there. So if you didn't
check out the stuff, even the old stuff.
Check it out. Yeah.
And I would like
to, etc.
Also, I'd like to reiterate that you should read his books. His books, his novels are great, and they often take things that we're so familiar with, like I Am Legend, the Omega Man, Last Man on Earth, and it enhances it, because you're getting the full story, you're getting the inner thoughts of the characters, and you're getting the intent of the author. And the Hell House book and his short story collections are really great. He also did Stir of Echoes, that Kevin Bacon movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
that was a great movie.
Yeah. It was. And he did he wrote a Star Trek episode, The Enemy Within.
Enemy Within,
where,
yes.
They based a Family Guy on one of his stories.
Yeah.
I mean, he's all over the place.
He's all over the place, yeah. And his son, his son is Richard Christian Matheson, who's also written a whole ton of television and is quite good on his own,
So good.
So he really is, kind of a giant in the world of TV and movies.
So do a Richard Matheson,
yes.
marathon.
We're big
So
fans,
good.
obviously.
All
we
right.
just can't stop talking about him.
I know we talked for a very long time. This is a very long episode. Sorry, guys. You listen to it in a couple. I guess we should have said that at the beginning. A couple of segments.
It's full of clips, though. There's a lot of clips.
Yeah.
We have a lot of clips.
Kids love clips.
A lot of clips.
Don't
No
forget to-
dialogue.
And
to
one last look at
subscribe.
the Zuni fetish doll.
Oh yeah, there he is.
He's
I
sort of
love him. He's so cute.
A bad.
Oh, he don't go. That's all you're gonna see in the Zuni fetish dog. He might be back.
Burke.
He might make a few little appearances.
Let's change that name.
All right, I think he's gone.
I think he's gone. I
don't
think
hear
we're
his
okay
little
for
feet.
now. All right.
Well, thanks again. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like and comment, of course.
Comment.
Because this on the Cinemondo.
Subscribe, like, comment,
all that
whatever.
good stuff, yeah.
Yep. Do all that stuff. That's social
Ring the
media stuff.
bell.
That's right. Yeah. Be sure and subscribe with the bell. The bell is very cool.
Yeah.
Get all kinds of cool announcements about us.
Yes.
That
Well,
probably
thanks
didn't
for
start.
joining us.
Bye.
We're gonna say goodbye now.
Bye.
Ta-ta.
Bye, everybody.